I mean, I don't want to say here we go again, but here we go again. We get a new Home Secretary, another chance to stop this ridiculous migration that goes on every single day. What are you hoping for? Can we have any faith that it might happen?
Well, I think, first of all, Suella Braverman is a breath of fresh air. She's in a different league to Priti Patel. And so I'm hopeful that any legislation she brings forward will actually have proper bite, if you like, at the risk of offending those who champion the rights of illegal migrants. It has to bite. It has to be implementable. It has to be deliverable. And what I liked about what I heard of this new proposed legislation is that it's utterly black and white. If you attempt to come into this country illegally across the channel, you will not have a right to stay. So there's no ifs and buts. Under the Nationality and Borders Act that Priti Patel brought in, there was provision for sending back people who came through safe countries, but there were also exceptions. And the minute you get into exceptions, you open up a legal quagmire of appeals, debates, and so on. And what I really like about this new proposed legislation, assuming it gets onto the statute books in the way that it's been described, is that it's black and white. If you've tried to come into this country illegally, you will not get asylum. That was one of the first legs of the Australian response to the problem they had, and that worked extremely well. What I suppose I'm disappointed with is Suella, and indeed Liz Truss said this during the leadership contest, Suella coming out and saying that we can't try pushback, that pushback won't work. And Liz Truss's argument was that if you push boats back into French territorial waters, well, they go back to the French coast, they get in another dinghy, and they try it again. Well, and my response to that would be, well, keep pushing them back. That's what border control is about. We've got to keep focusing in on what it is we're trying to achieve here. And that is not a viable deportation policy. What we're trying to achieve here is border control. And border control is a physical business. It's our border force and our Navy being on the edge of our territorial waters, making sure people who haven't got the right to enter our territorial waters do not enter. And I'm afraid the only way to do that is through pushback.
But this is the thing. I mean, whenever you have a conversation with anybody about this, you can't have the conversation, because if they think that the world should be welcoming all refugees, all migrants, no matter who they are, no matter where they've come from, no matter what they've done, there is no reasoning with those people. They assume, even if you say to them, look, here are Home Office figures that show that about 60% now, we think, possibly more, of the people currently coming every single day are from Albania, a place from which they could come legally. Surely there's something wrong with that. And they go, well, you can't say they're all drug dealers and they're all criminals. Well, why are they coming illegally then?
Well, there are people who British citizens who genuinely believe we shouldn't have enforced borders. I mean, it's the most bizarre thing. That is the end of the nation state. If you don't have borders that are enforced, you're not a nation state. And many of those people, won't surprise you to hear, Mike, are hashtag FBPE types who want to rejoin the European Union, who believe in shared sovereignty, who support freedom of movement across Europe, which, by the way, is also a serious contributing factor in the problem that we've got in the Channel. It's because there's freedom of movement in Europe that once you're in Europe, you can just come straight into France and straight across the Channel. And in a way, they're flattering us because they see that being in the United Kingdom is a lot better than being in Europe. But it's not the kind of flattery we want.
But again, like everything else that used to happen when we were in the European Union, most countries in Europe just go their own way. They don't bother with the EU. They don't even listen to anything the EU basically says. They do what they like. And we were always kind of slavishly adhering to the rules and regulations. So if we were told, well, you can take all these migrants, then we were supposed to take them. But, I mean, don't these idiots look at what's happened in Sweden and what's happening in Italy, where the electorate have got fed up with all the migration and have voted in right-wing parties, because that's, in the end, what's going to happen here, I think.
Yeah, and what's happening in the United Kingdom? Crime is up, knife crime is up. And, again, it's one of these debates people aren't prepared to have. But, there is a particular ethnicity associated with the rise in crime. And, I'm almost loath to even raise it on this show with you, which is a friendly show, because I can just see it being misinterpreted and thrown back in my face. But that is a reality. And if you have unchecked borders, if people are coming into the country who could be criminals, who could hold your culture in antipathy, who want to do damage to our nation because they don't believe in our values and our history and, what we stand for, and of which there are many, wrongly in my view, but of which there are many, we don't want them coming into the country.
No.
They are dangerous to us.
But even if you don't go down that particular road, Ben, and you say it's not a question of them all being dangerous, it's not a question of them all being people that we don't want to have here, it should still be a requirement that you know who they are and where they've come from.
Well, I mean, you don't know whether or not you want them here until you've vetted them. Yeah. So that's a prerequisite for allowing entry. So, I mean, I think you've got to have pushback at our territorial waters. And I hope Suella turns on that. It's not about having a viable deportation policy. That's very helpful. Great to reform the Human Rights Act. Great to pare back the European Court of Human Rights intervention in domestic affairs. But you've got to have a robust border control. Nothing makes up for that. I mean, just remember, Mike, when the Belarusian government was trying to create a migrant problem for Poland by deliberately bringing in Syrians and people into Belarus and then trying to export them across the border into Poland. Do you remember that about a year ago?
I do.
The Polish response was draconian.
Yeah.
They had no truck with it at all.
They just put a fence up, didn't they?
They put a fence up and they put the army behind the fence.
Yeah.
It was pretty clear what was going to happen to anyone who tried to...
In Sweden, we're here as well, that they're so fed up with the problem that they've started to basically deport people who they believe to be either in Sweden under false pretences or there illegally, and they're sending them back. Now, how come the ECHR isn't stopping that from happening?
Yeah, well, I haven't looked into the Swedish issue, but it is remarkable how... and it's not just the ECHR, though, is it, Mike? It's about our own domestic courts.
Oh, yeah.
It's remarkable how many lawyers and how many judges seem to be sympathetic to these people. And that plane that was stopped by the European Court of Human Rights taking off, the one attempt that we made, a genuine attempt to get some refugees to Rwanda, it only had one refugee on it.
Right.
Because by the time the plane was fully boarded with that one refugee, the British courts had successfully removed the other 300.
I know, just incredible.
That's the problem.
But you've also, when you've got the border force who are literally going on strike because they don't want to actually run the border and they don't want to actually stop people from coming through the border, even if they're illegal. When you've got the RNLI who are physically going out into French waters to pick people up from boats which aren't sinking in order to bring them into Dover and hand them over to some people who are going to give them a welcome package. When you've got the Home Office Union actually suing, I think, the government to stop them from having this policy of returning migrants. I mean, what chance have you got? It's unbelievable.
You haven't. And, they talk about deterrence being at the heart of their policy. Well, you're not going to deter anyone if you're providing a free taxi service. It's pretty obvious. They all know. It must be well televised across...
well, I mean, they're running adverts now. They're running adverts on TikTok in Albania. Come to Britain. We've got a knockdown price. It's only $3,500 this week, and we'll set you up with a nice house or a nice hotel room. You'll get food, you'll get money, and everything will be great.
Yeah. So everyone knows the minute you make it into British territorial water, you're going to get a free ride into the country, and then the British judicial system will see you right, and you won't be forced to leave. And we've just got to stop that. It's got to be twofold. I think what Suella is doing is absolutely right. It's got to be black and white legislation which enables deportation without a right of appeal. But there has also to be border control. There has to be pushback. There has to be pushback of boats into French waters. And if those people try again, they need to be pushed back again. And if they try again, they need to be pushed back again. And it has to keep going on until they realise that there is no easy way into the United Kingdom.